There's some chairs over here. It's been a good principle since ever I was a schoolboy that the front row never gets filled up. I was always lucky being a T, whereas my name's Nicholas True, I'm leader of the council. Being a T, I was always at the back of the class anyway, so I never had the problem of having to come to the front. Thank you very much for coming. It's so good to see so many of you here. I'm a great believer that I'm getting a bit grey hair now, and I'm a great believer. I remember the old days when politics was real and people met people and they had open meetings, and sometimes people heckled politicians, and it was face to face, not this awful email culture and everything done remotely. So what we're trying to do as a council are two things really. Trying to involve more and more people in the different localities of the borough in having a say, and a really meaningful say, in the future and the planning and the design of their localities. And of course Kew is one of the most beautiful and special villages, as I call them, and I think Kew is a village of our borough. And part of this process, two parts of this process, part is I and my colleagues, and you'll see us identified here, do go around and have what we call question times. Now I must make absolutely clear, I'm incredibly grateful that Jane Spencer, who will be known to so many of you as Chair of Governors of Darrell and Kew Riverside, you're the Governor of, I do just discussing, has agreed to chair the session. These are Dimbleby for the evening. But I can tell you that the questions, we have had no selection of questions. You can ask any question you like. It's not a quiz. I'm not somebody who pretends to know all the answers. We're here to listen, not to lecture and be know-alls. You know far more about Kew than I will ever know. So we want to know what you feel. And the second thing is that Kew at the moment is part of what we call our village planning process. Now, as you probably know, I've had a few fisticuffs with the government. I don't give a damn, forgive the language, what party label the government is. I think I'm here to defend the interests of local people. So I've been quarrelling with the government about planning and the nationalisation of planning. And what we actually want to try to do, and you'll see all the boards there, and it's going to be a further drop-in session and a consultation on the website. We're trying in the various communities to get people to plan, say what they would like to have in the localities. Some of this will be aspirational, but to find a way that we can build into our local plan, a Kew village plan, a Whitton village plan, an East Sheen maybe one day village plan. I come from East Sheen, but East Sheen seems to go a long way down the list. But the idea is that when we have these, that the planning committee will be able to use on a statutory basis what is in these plans to make decisions on planning and hopefully defend the nature of the locality. So we're here in Kew because this Kew Village Planning consultation is live at the moment, and I do hope you'll tell your friends and neighbours about it and get people involved, because there's a lot of work going on. So I will shut up. Maybe you'll make me sing again a bit later. I'm going to hand over to Jane, who will take control. As I say, don't be afraid to ask anything, and I don't pretend that we will know all the answers, but what I do promise you, we're not pretending we know all the answers, we're here to listen. But the points that you make, every one of those will be noted down, and we will make sure you get an answer, a specific answer to any point you raise, if we can't raise it this evening. So, Jane, over to you, and thank you, and I'm really grateful to you all for coming.
Thank you very much. just to make it clear, the only reason I am chairing tonight is simply that they couldn't find anybody else. I have lived in Kew for 27 years, and so like you, I'm very keen on preserving the specialness that is Kew. But beyond that, I'm an independent chair tonight, and I will not be commenting on anything that's been said. I've got to tell you the fire exits. Over there and over there. So there is no alarm or anything due tonight, so if we go up and smoke, I should go out of those exits very quickly. I think we're doing the first hour-ish on the questions that have been submitted by about 7 of you. I think you're all in the audience tonight. And then we're going to move on to any questions that you might want answered. But during the pre-submitted questions, there's no reason why you can't ask a supplementary question which is related to that topic rather than save it up for later on. So just put your hand up if there's something that you want to add to a question that's being pre-submitted. I think before we start, it might be quite an idea if the panel introduce themselves. I mean, I know they've got names in front of them, but I think, should we just do that so that you all know what people are?
Yeah, I'll start. My name is Gareth Evans. I'm the Cabinet Member for Communities, Business and Culture.
My name is Paul Hodgins. I'm Cabinet Member for Schools and Under 5s Education.
I'm Nicholas True, I'm Leader of the Council.
I'm Pamela Fleming, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment, Planning, Parks and Highways.
Chris Harrison, Cabinet Member for Highways and Streets.
Can I explain, by the way, we don't all have delusions of grandeur. This cabinet member is a ridiculous title that's actually written into law, in a law passed by the Blair government, but we don't pretend that we're as important as cabinet members. It means that we have the duty of actually looking after these particular areas of policy. Would that a ridiculous title could be abolished.
Right, with no more ado, shall we begin? I think the first question is going to be from David Clark. Is he here? Would you mind? I think, Tom, is there a microphone?
No,
there isn't. You just got to speak loud.
Okay, that's fine. I'll try and paraphrase a rather long question. Clearly involving the planning process. And my comment is that in recent years the planning process hasn't involved planning. It's just been a processing of applications. In the past, in my experience, officers would engage with householders and developers and come up with schemes that would benefit all by resolving any conflicts between the initial proposals and planning projects. More recently, planning officers seem to go through the motions of evaluating the scheme, and as soon as any negative impact is identified, a refusal notice is issued. There is no engagement to discuss how or if any conflicts might be resolved. And I think this is despite the pre-app process which I have prioritised as well. And there's a very trivial example here that does highlight the issue. I've been trying to get high-speed broadband in my house in North Kew because I run a charity website which involves a lot of uploading of visual and videos. And I've been waiting for the BP OpenReach system to be available for me. And I found out after many delays that the reason I couldn't get it is because the council refused the application for a broadband cabinet on Kew Road. Despite the applicant's letters saying if there are any issues please discuss them, it was just refused on the grounds of the impact on the building, which may have been the right decision, but this is something that benefits a lot of people, and planning should plan with the development of BPO for something that does benefit more people. So you see, is there a technical solution? Is there another site? Should it be acceptable to all? And if I could indulge, Chair, just by asking a supplementary question, only occurred to me on the way down here. I did read some years ago about a proposal to link Stradbroke Green with Kew Roadside with a pedestrian bridge attached to the railway bridge. I seem to remember reading a comment that this couldn't be done because of the nature of the listed nature of the railway bridge. And I can't quite see the logic in that, bearing in mind that the identical design railway bridge in Putney does have an attached pedestrian bridge, which would be a great benefit to the many new residents of new developments in North Kew and giving them access to the facilities of Stradbroke Green.
Thank you very much. Should we just take the first one first? I think the second point, I think Councillor Fleming is going going to answer.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. And I do absolutely agree with you that you know, there should be simple planning advice and discussion. And this is something that I'd certainly like to take up with our officers, because I think it's very important. Planning is quite difficult for people. It does need to be demystified, and there should be discussion first of all. So I take on board what you say. There was, though, the broadband cabinets, the specific thing of the broadband cabinets. I know that there was a lot of conversation between our planners and BT, largely because, of course, people were concerned in many cases about sites and specific sites. You mentioned one of the listed buildings, and I know in some cases people didn't want them outside their houses. So I think our officers did take, quite a lot of care about this. And on the specific one you were mentioning on Kew Road, all I can say really is that, I'm happy to have a conversation with officers about it and to know, to find out about that specific one. But, of course, now on conservation areas, I'm afraid we don't even have a say on that, because that, once again, is something that the government has now said BT can put their broadband cabinets in conservation areas as well. But I think you have a very fair point, and I take all you say on board.
It isn't it? I don't want to make myself a nuisance by keeping coming in on questions. It's very important. The two phases of the question are important. I mean, part of the reason for this process of trying to get a village plan which has consent in the different areas defined within Kew of what people accept and support, is to facilitate as well as to prevent. So if something is clearly in character, in line with the Kew village plan that people support, it should be easier for officers to give a consent. It works both ways. On the broadband, I myself, these cases have occurred in wards all over the borough, and it's extremely annoying. In fact, the box that should be at the top of my road has never been put in for a very similar reason. I've actually met the BT Open World people. I found at that point that their people and our people, and indeed other councils' people, were simply not talking to each other. And the top man in BT Open World was going and complaining to the Chancellor that councils all over the country were stopping them. And it is a basic, simple thing. I said, look, couldn't we actually solve this by one intelligent officer from our council and somebody with a bit of responsibility in your organisation getting in a car, driving around the borough, saying, here's a problem, there's a problem, there's no problem there. It ought to be something in a common sense world could be solved in a day. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I apologise from the point of view of our officers were difficult. I hope we can sort out. At the moment, the position is that the government has given open season for these things to be put wherever the bodies want to put them, even in conservation areas. But the reason we got into a row in the first place was that some of the places they were being put in were absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I had one in my ward where they'd actually dumped the cabinet literally almost in the middle of a pavement, about 3 feet away from the wall, so that a disabled person in the road couldn't get down the road because they had to drive their car. And so, I fully take note of the point you make. It's a difficult one.
Yes.
I ask, following on what you just said, if BT is allowed to build these wherever they like, and if that maintains, would this planning document that we're talking about have any way of stopping that? Saying, actually, you can't put them right in the green or
Not on these cabinets. I mean, what it could do, if you said we don't want cabinets put in everywhere, that they shouldn't go outside listed buildings, we could write that certainly into the plan, but in respect of boxes, until 2018, it's a temporary thing, the communications people have the power to override. After 2018, again, councils will have the responsibility. That's the position. So for this period, while the government has said you can do anything, we would be able to be overridden.
They will have more power than the ratepayers in the district.
Yes, regrettably, I personally, as you know, I've been fighting a bit of a national battle on this, and it was only because of, sorry, how rude of me not to stand up, but I mean it was only because I actually found myself in the surreal position of a division in the House of Lords in which the first people in the queue supporting me were John Prescott and Neil Kinnock, not something that I'd actually expected as a Conservative politician ever to happen. And yes, Neil Kinnock did say he's done well, boyo, as well. But we managed to preserve the right of neighbours to comment on next door neighbours' large extensions, which the government was proposing to take away. I think they've done some very silly things in that respect. We've got this willy-nilly transfer of office space to residential now, which I'm bitterly opposed to. We took legal action against it, but unfortunately we lost the case. We are losing office spaces to, frankly, developers who are giving us nothing in return for affordable housing, for schools, and so on and so forth. So I'm not happy about these derogations, but temporarily they are there. But I don't think that invalidates, and it doesn't affect every aspect of planning, it doesn't invalidate, I think, us as communities trying to say what we would like.
Should we just bring it back now to the local issue that we were asked in the first place by David? Has anybody else got any comments that they want to make or questions they'd like to ask on that before we move on to the next question? Can we put the railway bridge to one side until we finish the set of questions, but we won't forget. Jim Swindles is the next person.
So my question is what steps is the council taking to prevent the planned development north of Kew Bridge, by that I mean the Brentford football club proposed move, etc., and the consequent increase and pressure on road traffic and demand for services in a very crowded area? But perhaps a supplementary question is there anything that you can do?
I think Councillor Howson is going to answer this one. I think perhaps he probably will start with, is there anything that we can do?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I'll just read out the response that has been prepared by our council staff, and then just maybe add some more remarks on. With respect to the Brentford football ground development, I would emphasise that the planning decision is not our decision, it not being in the borough. But we have raised with Brentford concerns over traffic issues, and we'll need to keep a keen eye on any parking impacts that may occur within the Kew area, which is covered by a community parking zone, or I believe it's 2 hour.
No, it's not.
Well, that was from the head of highways. So, the bottom line is we can't stop Brentford taking the decision to do whatever they're going to do, but we can observe very closely the parking impacts on this side of the bridge. As you probably all know, there is a big controlled zone around Twickenham Stadium, event zone R, and on certain dates that is verboten for people who don't live there. So all I can say is I don't know how many, what the timescales are of the Brentford thing, how many years it will take to get off the ground. But once, if they do give it the go-ahead, then we can monitor it here, and there are things we can do to mitigate the impact of any people coming to that venue.
Yes, would you like to begin?
Caroline Brock, speaking to the Kew Society. We commissioned some...
To speak up,
we commissioned some independent traffic consultants to look at the impacts of, and it's not so much the stadium that's an issue and the match days, it's the enabling development of 910 flats. And what the traffic consultants identified is that the traffic around Chiswick roundabout will double, and along the Kew Road and around Kew it could be as much as 3 times the congestion on an already very congested area. So that's the big issue. The GLA, interestingly, in their decision not to intervene, said the same thing as our traffic consultants, but they decided not to intervene. I don't know why. So really, I think that the question is, if it does go ahead, what is the mitigation that Richmond can engage in together with Hounslow to do something about the huge traffic congestion that we're going to have in the future?
It's very difficult because the capacity of our road network is by and large fixed, and we're not going to build any massive, throughways, highways, or what have you, because of the impact on our treasured environment in the borough. All I can reiterate is that our head of highways said we have relayed these traffic concerns to Brentford, over this Brentford scheme. But in the last analysis, it is for that borough to decide. So, can I ask, did your consultant, was the council, Richmond Council, provided with a copy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Would it not be sensible for the council to contact Transport for London directly, because it's their responsibility, and there is stuff that could be done in improving the current road system in order to cope with it?
We can certainly, well, I will, yes, we'll talk to Transport for London about it. If there are very large increases in traffic, without building unwanted, horrible, big trunk roads through the borough, it's very difficult to address.
Well, the stretch between Kew Bridge and Chiswick Roundabout is a one-way part of the way. I mean, there are things that could be done with the existing roads to improve matters before it's too late.
Okay, well, look, I'll undertake, I'll talk to our head of highways about it, and we'll talk to Transport.
I mean, perhaps I come in. It is a problem. This is where I'm a great defender of boroughs, but obviously it is a problem where one borough does something and knocks into another borough. And insofar as Chris has said, comments could be made, comments were made, and indeed I know that Zach Goldsmith made some comments. I confess I'm a Notts County supporter. I can say with shame they're bottom of the division, so I don't have any sympathy particularly with Brentford Football Club, but instinctively. But Transport for London are not the easiest organisation to deal with, but I fully take the point. I mean, we do need to engage very actively. It is an appallingly congested road. In Sheen, where I am, we also share, like you do, Kew and Sheen share the nightmare of the so-called South Circular Road. And ultimately it's a problem that I'm very interested in the things that Hammersmith are talking about in major tunnels and so on and so forth. This may be a fanciful future, but in the longer term we may have to be prepared to think of those kind of things. On the parking, obviously, if there are, I'm instinctively not somebody who wants to take people's money away in terms of parking. We've tried to reduce the burden on people in terms of parking. We are actually one of the few councils in the country that have budgeted to reduce the amount of money that they get from parking, and we have reduced that. But clearly, if it is felt that there are areas where we need an experience to look at restrictions, and there is majority support, there has to be majority support for that, which I think is reasonably democratically. I'm sure that, Chris and the traffic officers will look at it. It's very important that, there is an ongoing dialogue with the Kew Society and with you, and if you feel that your voice isn't being heard, then it's up for us as elected members to take that back to professional officers.
I will pick you up on that, because obviously Kew Society has been seeking to work with officers, because it's found it actually quite challenging to do so. But I think it's important to make the point that not only is there a traffic issue as a result of the current proposed by Brentford Football Club and their enabling body. But there is also a challenge coming up with TfL's proposals to introduce new cycling safety measures for the route from Kew Bridge up to Chiswick Roundabout. And I find it difficult to believe, I'm not a traffic engineer, I find it difficult to believe that actually it's possible to create safer space for cyclists without reducing the space for four-wheel vehicles, or indeed large trucks. And against that backdrop, it seems to me that the combination of those cycling safety measures and the Brentford development is going to pose some serious tail-back problems within Richmond, particularly over Kew Bridge. And that too is going to lead to pollution issues of a quite serious proportion. I think the Brentford development is already in a number of areas challenged from its pollution generation. But of course, all of these measures coming together is going to increase pollution. And pollution is one of those areas where actually, God forbid, any of us want to hear something favourable coming out of the EU, but there are some quite serious measures coming forward from the EU, and we really ought to be taking advantage of those to actually suggest to Hounslow that they need to look again at their proposals.
I think that's a very interesting point, and I say, I mean, I think we, as someone who represents, if you like, as I just said, the other part of the borough that has this nightmare of the South Circular Road going through it in East Sheen. It's a nonsense that that road is there and that it bears the traffic it does. So I perfectly take your point about the need for further strategic examination. I think that's something that we should do, and perhaps this might be an occasion, that this development in Hounslow, to take that away. I must say I personally hadn't grasped the point about the additional cycling proposals, and I'm very glad that you've raised that. I'm sure, Chris, you need to take you'll take that away and consider the options. I'm sorry, I'm not. I said I don't claim to be the person who knows everything. I hadn't realised that that was a proposal from TfL. It does seem to me, as someone, I don't actually own a car myself, but I do occasionally drive, and I must say that I can see along there that I can't see how you could get those remedial measures in myself either, just off the top of my head. I don't like commenting on things I don't know about, and I'm interested in what you said, and we'll take it away.
I think we've got one more comment.
I agree, it is an appalling threat and danger coming our way. I suppose the problem is the decisions are taken from so far away in relation to this immediate bridge with its single lane and traffic. It's quite appalling. And all I think we can do positively at the moment is to ask TfL what they're going to do when Kew Bridge finds itself jammed, as it will.
We will certainly do that. I very, very much take the point that's been made on the cycling aspect. Obviously, the Brentford aspect is one that I was familiar with.
Has anybody else got? Yes.
Have you got any say-so on timetabling of the matches at Twickenham? Because the ultimate nightmare for the whole of West London is if there is a meeting at Twickenham, at Kew Bridge and at Wembley on the same day. And it's quite possible, but it would actually mean traffic paralysis.
I think it's a very good point, but it's probably a little way down the line.
Just to say, it's not just matches at Twickenham, there's lots of events there, big events, which have huge crowds.
Yeah.
John, you also need to factor in that we do have the number one, I think, increase in visitors this year was Kew Gardens.
Yeah.
And Kew are desperate to increase their numbers and will be doing so in the foreseeable future.
Yes, well, that's very true as well. I must say, I think Richard Deverell's doing a wonderful job at Kew Gardens, by the way. I think it's wonderful to see Kew Gardens, which has seemed sort of huddled behind its wall for quite a long time, wanting to throw out and engage and be in with the community. And I enthusiastically supported the Richmond card. With your Richmond card you can get an extra entry into queue, as you know. But I take the point that you make. On Twickenham, yes, they do have to discuss that. They have their proposals, they can set the timetable, but they obviously have to conform with a whole series of requirements, and as Chris was saying, on match days we can put in and do put in extra restrictions. But this is a strategic issue which I'm taking away very, very strongly taking away.
I think we've got one more comment.
I just wonder if you're not maybe kill two birds with one stone here and take the cyclists off Kew Bridge and send them over the railway bridge with the pedestrians that want to
We'll revisit that one later on. I think it's time to move on to the next question now. If you've got further comments that you want to make to any of the questions that are put tonight, there will be a means of getting back to the members here after this meeting. So don't think that you've lost that opportunity. And speak.
Very quick question. Delighted to hear about the forthcoming improvements of the pedestrian crossing at Kew Road, just by Lion Gate. I just wondered when the work will start. I think it's a brilliant thing.
Perhaps you'd like to tell everybody what the improvements are, because I'm not sure.
First of all, let me say why that crossing is being looked at. There is an accident record there. As I personally well know, as an elderly Morris Minor came into the back of my 1-month-old car at that crossing 30 odd years ago, and there have continued to be accidents there. So we do really need to address it as the Highways Department. We have a statutory duty to reduce accidents where we can. So to the re-prepared bit from the Highways Department, and then a comment after that. For the Lion Gate Kew Road pedestrian crossing, we have been out to local consultation, which shows support for the conversion from a zebra to a signalled controlled crossing, and officers are now discussing with Transport for London the results of that consultation, in particular whether there is any scope to make a slight adjustment to the location of the crossing, which was suggested by some residents, bearing in mind the proximity of the bus stops. So what that is code for is that we're into this deadly embrace with Transport for London, because it's a part of the strategic London road network. They have a veto on anything that happens there, and London buses control the disposition of bus stops. So if we want to try and move the crossing slightly, even 10 yards, we're going to have to move the bus stops as well. So we're talking to Transport for London at the moment about that. We don't know their attitude yet because we've only just started to talk to them. So I wish I could answer your question clearly and decisively, but what we find is discussions with Transport for London can take a considerable time. But it's in this year's, this financial year, this coming financial year's highways budget to do the work. So all I can say is sometime in the next in the coming financial year, which starts in April.
Transport for London's ears must be burning right now. Does anybody else want to add anything to that one? Or should we just move on? Thank you. Anna Anderson? Are you Anna?
I was advised by your colleague to speak in a high-pitched voice. So I'm afraid she's not here, but I'm on it. So her question is, are there any plans to improve the plaza area on the east side of Kew Gardens Station? This area feels like the core relation of the village area on the western side of the station. So is there anything that the council can do, particularly about the empty house stroke shop stroke museum next to the newsagents, which has been empty for several years and is a bit of an eyesore? Although the tractor in the front garden could be construed as a novelty, the garden is also full of rubbish. If the property could be developed, it would be a huge improvement, and the question is a compulsory purchase possible?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Yes, well, in fact, this particular area was one of the areas that was discussed when we had stakeholder event on the village planning consultation at Kew Gardens, in fact. And this particular site was discussed. It is a private site, and my understanding is that it is in fact up for sale, and that there is active interest in trying to sell it. So I think we have to look and see what happens as far as that's concerned, because compulsory purchase orders are very, very difficult actually. We have put through, I think there were one or two that came to Cabinet a year or so ago, but I think in general it is very, very difficult. But some improvements generally on that side were discussed. And I think it would be possible probably to have to implement some of these with the Civic Pride grants. As you probably know, the council does have grants of up to £5,000 for small environmental projects, or projects to benefit the community. And I think that at that meeting as well, we had several representatives from Kew Gardens, and I think they generally are interested in getting involved with the community to see how they can improve it as well. So yeah, very positive, and part of the whole village planning process. That's exactly the sort of project that people would want to see.
Perhaps if I can just come in as well and give a little bit more information, because obviously I look after the business side of things as Pam looks after the environmental and the planning side, and I think our officers on the economic development team are engaging, or trying to engage with the Kew Traders Association and trying to get them to become more active on the other side. We have in other areas worked and provided grants to improve the shop fronts. So that's something that we could look at on an ongoing basis, and there is some funding that we can access for that. And the other thing that we have done is that we can give grants for pop-up shops as maybe a potential another answer to the issue you've got of that empty property. And there's a good example where that's happened in Whitton, where again it's the business association that's come forward with an idea, and we've helped them with a grant for a pop-up shop that they have then sublet to a group of artists, and those artists are now in that shop, and they are creating and selling their own works of art to the local community. And actually I believe as the project goes forward, they're also doing sort of workshops and classes with local residents as well. So there is that sort of, there is those opportunities, and if we come up, if people in the local area have ideas, and the Trade Association have ideas, there are things that we can do to help facilitate those moving forward.
Just a question at the back first. Yeah.
I was going to say, while we're on the subject of that side of the station, that there really needs to be a renovation in the directions for the gardens. I live in North Road, and a number of people are shepherding back because they look at the map and can't understand it. And they walk down North Road. Sometimes hold school parties. And I'm sure Mr. Deverell would be quite happy to help customers.
It's a very good point.
Thank you.
Yes, that building has been for sale for maybe 5 years. It's probably unsafe inside with rocky floors. I have been in there several years ago, and I practically fell through the floorboards. So it couldn't be a pop-up shop, and there's a lot of money spent on it. In fact, you could probably demolish it on health and safety.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, on CPO, sorry, no jargon, compulsory purchase. As was said by Pamela, I mean, we have revived a bit the use of compulsory purchase, and we have threatened it, and indeed exercised it on some properties in the borough. You tend to find that when you threaten it, somebody suddenly appears from somewhere in the Far East and emerges as being the beneficial owner. But the problem with it is, like everything in law, it takes a long time, and it doesn't provide a very swift solution. But I think that we can have a look at this, but I'm certainly not promising. I never promise anything I'm not going to do. But we'll have a look and talk to the officers and see whether there's anything more constructive couldn't be done. But I don't think that CPO is going to provide an easy solution. Well, inspection is certainly is something that is much easier to do. Yes.
Any other comments on the other side? Yes.
Yes, hi, David Lynette, I'm a councillor for Kew. You need to be really careful what outside in the council side, because it's in private ownership. The guy who owns it is trying to sell, has been trying to sell for a number of years, has dropped the price dramatically. I think it's quite unfair to single him out. He's an eccentric gentleman, yes, but it is private property, and I don't think we ought to be talking about compulsory purchase on something that has got a for sale sign outside. So I think we do need to be careful on it.
Any other comments on that? Other side of the railway? Okay, Caroline Brock, I think you're up next. Do you not know you're asking a question? Number 6. Have I? Well, that's efficient, isn't it? Teresa Hart. Are you Teresa Hart?
Yes.
Well, then it's your turn.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Kew Society. What discussions is the council having with the NHS to support the development of primary care facilities in Kew, including the potential moving of North Road surgery to the Inland Revenue site?
Councillor Trier, I think.
Yes, I fear you're getting rather too much of me. I need to sit down a bit more. I mean, obviously the public health is now coming to be an area in which councils are going to be given more influence. But as far as the provision of surgeries are concerned, I mean, that falls within it's the clinical side and CCG and so on. We have said in the site allocation plan for the Inland Revenue site that we have said, the council in planning terms, that would be an appropriate place for a surgery on that Inland Revenue site if it's developed. So in theory, we would like to see that happen as part of a mixed use of that site. As I understand it, and I'm not involved, I'm only just answering from briefing that we've been given, which is that there have been meetings between the partners and NHS England, a primary care commissioning team, who are in the jargon, the people who are actually in charge to look at relocation. And again, according to the brief, they're looking at the business case at the moment for potentially relocating into premises, which again they think might well be the Inland Revenue site. And I am told that the practice partners have actually met the site owner to discuss plans. So it looks as if it's possible that might happen, but at the moment it's just a subject for consideration. And I'm told that the clinical commissioning group, they are going to be continuing discussions. Yes, sir.
Sorry, may I just interject?
Yeah.
There is an exhibition tomorrow and on Saturday about the development at the Inland Revenue site, and the councillors, local councillors, and by the way, I'm Councillor Mina Bond, we had discussions with the developers, and they were quite positive that they might be able to, with their section 106, accommodate our wishes. So we'll keep our fingers crossed until tomorrow.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, following the demise of Dr. Lawrence's surgery on Kew Gardens Road, that resulted in 3 surgeries in Kew instead of 4. Many people transferred to the North Road surgery because I think it's generally regarded as excellent. They're struggling. They're struggling both in terms of space, and they're struggling both in terms, I believe, of just coping with all the people who they've taken on. So there's an urgent issue here that needs to be taken into account.
Which is why this talks again.
Is it possible to have North Road and
Sorry, did you have a comment on that?
I'm saying the lease is running out on North Road.
Right, okay. I think we can't just tell them where to go, but I think what they need are 4 doctors within that surgery, and they do not have space for 4 doctors for 7,000 patients. It's just a size issue. Yes.
Thank you, Sati. actually have been meeting with Taylor MP to discuss their plans, and we suggested that they should contact the Norfolk surgery because we know that the lease is coming to an end. And we know from Taylor MP that Norfolk surgery have put in an application to the NHS for funding to take that idea forward, so we're very pleased about that. The question really is there anything the council can do with the NHS, with the commissioning group, to say, please support this application?
Well, we're certainly encouraging it, and implicit, obviously, in my response and planning terms, we think that's what we would like to see happen. We would like to have closer cooperation with the clinical commissioning group all round, and we did have a proposal for a wider integrated health care involving the clinical commissioning group, but for the time being the Richmond doctors have decided they don't want to proceed with that, so there are ongoing discussions, and that leaves the council slightly at arm's length from these kind of decisions. In terms of public health, we are also considering, as we get some resource from the government for public health, whether there are other ways in which the council, using council money, might be able to supplement. Might not be on a mobile, would not be possible, but to supplement the healthcare offer that there is in various parts of the community. This is subject to live discussion at the moment because there's so much uncertainty and flux in the health service structure there has been over the years. But it does seem, with your help also, that we hopefully we will be able to get that landed in that revenue side.
There's a question over here.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I was sent a planning document last night from the council, and there's a planning application coming up for Express Dairies, which is on the other side of the A316, and apparently that has provision for an NHS doctor's surgery on the ground floor of that, assuming it got permission next Thursday. And I don't know if that's relevant to part of the queue.
It's not in the queue.
No, I know it's not, but another doctor's surgery would presumably service the residents of the South Queue.
North Richmond. Anybody else got anything to say on that before we move on? Martin Taylor.
I share the concerns of the Kew Society about the changing nature of the riverside and the extensive new developments in Brentford affecting visitors from historic heritage sites in Kew and increasing light pollution.
Just to clarify, you're not talking the new stadium and the enabling developments, you're talking along the river?
I'm very happy to include the new stadium.
I'm sure you are, but you are talking of the developments that are going up along the river.
There are issues, obviously, looking forward as to lighting of the new development, if it happens. But at present, there are issues already, have been issues, in which the need for, I would suggest, the town planning department to take an interest in what's happening there and ensure that at the very least representations are made about applications which do impact on Kew Gardens and the riverside.
Thank you.
Well, in a way, to answer the question, because that's exactly, yes, it is of course, it is again Hounslow, but yes, we do need, I do absolutely share your concern about this, and it is really something that we will have to talk to officers about when there are applications, to make representations to Hounslow itself, yeah.
So, did the council make representations about what has happened?
Did they? About which house?
Wallace House.
Which
That's the, I suppose we might call the old Richmond building on corner of, next to the
I'm sorry, I can't tell you. I will have to go back and ask officers. I can't give you a specific answer to that question. I just don't know. So I will have to ask if they did and come back to you about it.
It's not too late.
Yes, I realise it's too late. Yeah, I realise. I will have to ask whether they did or not.
Is Does anybody else have anything to contribute on the Brentford development? It does seem to be rather a lot of them, I have to say. Yes,
just very briefly to add, I don't think it's just a question of reacting when applications put in, but taking a strategic view with as a council about these are impacted. They're huge developments that are going on. It's not to be anti-Brentford, I think. It's the fact that they've increased their population by 40%. And there is an impact over the river, and I'm not sure that there is a dialogue going on a strategic basis of what the riverside should be looking at, and a very different kind of development basis than something in Brentford compared to Cambridge.
I absolutely take that on board, and I will discuss it. I think it's incredibly important. I agree. I actually took over Dubai at the end of September, but I think you're absolutely right, and I agree with you.
Sorry, can I add to that? The Thames Landscape Strategy was signed up to by Richmond and Hounslow, and it's been completely ignored by Hounslow Council for several years. It'd be nice if Richmond could, if nothing else, raise that subject with the Hounslow.
Yes, absolutely. I think actually the current chairman of Thames Landscapes is a Hounslow member.
Is it?
That's Paul Lynch, isn't it?
Sorry?
Paul Lynch, isn't it?
Yes.
Sounds like you should know better. Francesca Snow, next.
Thank you, sorry. It's also on planning and visual communities. Your commitment to maintaining the character, ambience and inherent history of the area is commendable, but I'd like to ask, is the council really able to monitor developments and their adherence to the conditions set on the original granting to the Planning Commission? There are 33 households just on Sanditon Road, not to mention North Road, who now effectively have an industrial estate behind them, when the land had never been built on before. Many people in Kew, who don't live on Sanditon Road, have approached me to comment with horror that this structure has gone up. You've only got to travel between Richmond and Kew on the train to see this thing. They don't understand how it was allowed to be built on the north side of the lower Richmond Road, because it just doesn't fit in. It's not really compatible with the ambience and the atmosphere that was previously there. So we just wanted to ask if the council is able to protect you from further blight.
Well, I think that went through on appeal, if I remember rightly. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was back in 2007, I think. So, it's a long time ago. Went through an appeal, and there have, I think, been subsequently some enforcement investigations. But what we're doing now with the supplementary planning documents is to provide this sort of strategic advice about what is acceptable in the character of the area. This will therefore be, this will be taken account of by an inspector. It will first of all be something that our planning officers themselves will have in front of them when they're considering applications, and of course the planning committee. So, of course, you never know what's going to happen when it goes to appeal. I mean, that is not in us yet. But, I mean, I think that this is a real opportunity to protect the character of the area with what we are doing with the supplementary planning documents. It's the first time that we've had this sort of detail and the level of detail about what people, everybody has had the opportunity to have an input to this, and it is out for consultation now. The documents that you will see there, that you see there, have a look, put in and continue putting your comments to the consultation. But this is the first time, this is what people actually say, that how they want to see the style and the character of their area. So it certainly will be part of our planning documents, and that will be taken into account when applications are, if something is referred for appeal. So you can never have a cast iron guarantee, but this certainly is better than anything that we've had before.
Yes, I'm one of the 33 houses affected, and I've got 3 questions. I really will keep them brief, but none of that brief. First of all, I'm completely flummoxed as to how, and I do realise that it did go to appeal and it did get passed by the planning inspectorate in Bristol, not by Richmond. Richmond didn't oppose it. I'm told several times by people on the council that you did oppose it, but you didn't. You didn't actually take the necessary vote. This lady was at the meeting and knows that. But in Richmond, the whole of Richmond, when I say the whole of Richmond, I mean Richmond upon Thames and Kew, where I live, there are an uncountable number of empty office and industrial spaces. You drive along the Lower Mortlake Road, and there are several empty blocks. The house in Paradise Road, the building in Paradise Road, the Premier House, I noticed today, after years of being empty, is to let. There are, when the planning permission for that went through, I made it my mission to count up Sandringham Road in both directions and just the first block along in the Lower Mortlake Road. And there were over 18 empty premises for offices. So it completely puzzles me why Richmond will say, yes, go ahead and build more. And now we have the threat that, well, if we can't let them as offices, we will change them into residential. So my first question is, does Richmond Council ever think perhaps we don't need another block of offices? It can remain empty if it does. And if it doesn't, it leaves another block that could have been sold unsold. I don't know what the plan is. Is it to fill the place with office space that doesn't get occupied?
Well, we do need our employment now. I'm sure Councillor True wants to just come in on this, but we certainly do need our employment because this is, after all, what we need to encourage investment into the borough. And we also need office space for businesses that we have here to develop. So we do need office space. I can talk about the one on Paradise Road, which is in fact has been to let for years. And that again is an application that went through, was allowed on appeal. And it is in fact going to be a Travelodge hotel. But we do, I mean, we really do need our office space. Some of the space that we've got is actually not, because it needs to be updated, and that's why frequently people want to have new offices, want new offices, or they need to demolish the existing block.
But I'm not disputing that we need office space. What I'm saying is you've got it, and it's not occupied. People are not buying it or renting it.
They are, well,
there's so many empty offices along the Lower Mortlake Road.
I think a lot of them are being converted into housing now, in fact. You know,
I don't dispute that you need the office space. What I'm politely saying is you've already got it, and you've got more than you need. And we're landed with this monstrosity of a building. My second question is, how frustrating it is, isn't exactly a question, but we fought against the development, we fought against various aspects of it. Some changes were made, like it was lowered in some sections from 3 stories to 2. Since the work started, there have been an enormously large number, if you live where we do, of changes. Suddenly the material has changed. So instead of being a brick wall, we have a brick wall with a curved plastic top that looks like a recycling centre. Then it's on the wrong line, so they've moved the lines, and now they're effectively saying they've repositioned the building. They haven't repositioned the building at all. They've altered the lines that affect the position of the building. They're saying that it's too tall, because the foundations were built on a concrete, old, unused road, not dug under. Retrospective permission, okay, it's too tall, sorry about that. We've changed the material, sorry about that. So all the things that we thought we'd won, somebody in the development just says, can we change this, or we have changed that, and somebody signs it off. So it's like we get one chance, and something is agreed or not agreed.
They made it much longer than was originally.
Pardon?
They made it longer as well.
I don't believe they've made it longer. I think they've changed the plan to take slightly some of the building off the other end, which makes us wish we had only one story.
Should we just ask Councillor Fleming to respond about the planning?
Well, I know, and I accept that planning is something that's very emotional and emotive for everyone, and I also know that it can be, very frustrating when you see retrospective planning applications go in. Particularly if you think you've actually managed to modify a bad application or a development like that. I mean, if there are specific issues, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. It's probably, I imagine, too late now, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards and take anything back, any information back to the planners.
Well, that's very kind of you. I've raised these points. I mean, the change of material, we're told that you can't object to that. I mean, if people
Well, I would
would
like to take these
please,
aspects back to the
we can do
plan.
about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
Thank you. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I do. I just like to warn fellow residents of Tellington Road, where I'm also a resident, that there's nothing we can do. I live next to a development where the council sold off a council house, which could have been used as a council house, has not replaced it, sold it off to private developers. I went through 2 years of development. The build was starting at 7:30 a.m. every morning. They blocked my lights, they built an attic. The final straw was adding on an attic window that looks directly into 2 of my bedrooms, and they're allowed to do it. Retrospectively, they can carry on putting on windows in that look into your house way afterwards. So just to warn you, and don't expect any sympathy or support from the planning department, because they've been absolutely useless, as has the project solicitor. It's a waste of money. And the only thing you can do is employ your own hot and, you know, not only have they taken away affordable housing in the centre of Kew, they've let some people just ride roughshod over it, and they will do that to you too, just to warn you.
Well, perhaps I can say something. Firstly, let me apologise for that if that has happened to you and it's happened to a lot of other people in this borough. I feel sorry. You can shake your head and I understand why you are. I am actually making a genuine apology because this
You haven't got it looking into your bedroom, have you?
Well, I don't want
Or your teenage child's bedroom?
I don't actually want to get into the individual case. I'm not going to say what anybody has had next. And what I'm trying to say is that I believe that there is great frustration about the planning system and about planning not only in this borough but elsewhere. I personally find it extremely hard to understand how the balance has got to be where it is in law on retrospective applications. I don't want to go into any individual case because planners and planning officers take decisions and they take a view on whether it's possible to defend against a retrospective application. I personally believe that the law should not permit large-scale retrospective applications. Those who say that people say in response to that, well, things crop up in building, you can't knock people's houses down, etc., etc., etc. I believe that the planning system is skewed far too much in favour of the developers and the people who want to make gains, and far too little against the householder. I don't think it's not just true in Richmond, in this council, it's true across the country, and I believe that it needs to change, and I'm campaigning to try and get that change. That is no consolation to you, and I do apologise that that has happened to you, because I'm not going into my personal circumstances, but I can entirely, if I may say, empathise with you in having something horrendous put up next to one. But where I also believe, and I think that since I'm now the leader of the council, I should also say that I think we have had some atrocious building put up in Richmond. When I think you go towards Richmond, what is one of the most beautiful towns in the country? You have Kew, one of the most beautiful areas of the country, and we have a kind of semi-industrial desert of really poor, low-quality building. And I think that historically, over a generation, we have failed, and it's an image of a country that's actually failed to understand the importance of quality in building, and to understand the importance. I hate this word NIMBYs. Why shouldn't people have a say and have an objection and have a feeling about what is going on in and around their area? I wish I could perhaps go back. We've just heard this particular Sandicombe Road thing was given permission by an inspector who probably came here for a day, maybe 2 days, and went off. These things should not be remotely cited, but that is the state of the law at the moment. On the individual case you've raised, I'm sure Councillor Fleming will, we need to be vigilant on this one. I must say, people have been asking me what's that, and I didn't know, I didn't know there was any recent application. I'd forgotten that this thing was done in 2007. So
I passed in 2006. No work was done for about 5 years.
Yes,
2000. It's gone away.
It was 2 years. Yes, it was. I think it was 2007 when the inspector finally approved it. I think it may have been late 2006.
Can I just add though, that
Yeah.
the inspector made certain conditions, and of course we've now dug out the
Yes.
postal agreement with the conditions, and a lot of those conditions are being overridden.
Well, that is it's a balance of judgment then whether the inspector is going to uphold the council if the council tries to enforce those. But this is a very, very, I think the law does not operate in a way. Good law carries public consent. I think you would get much more development. Governments, I don't know where the consent is to expand the population of London to 10 million, frankly. Nobody's ever asked whether that's in. We're told that's going to happen. But if it's going to happen, it has to be done with consent, and part of consent is people agreeing that the buildings going up is acceptable, adequate and of a standard. And I do think those things need to be addressed. Sadly, we as a community can't solve that in this hall on this evening. But I'm not going to be, Mr. Town Hall, saying what you're saying is not something which is rightly angry. I do understand about it, and insofar as I want our planners to do the utmost to defend what residents believe are their rights. Everybody wants their day in court. If you've lost a planning application, it's sad, but at least you had the argument. But if your decision has been gone through with conditions, we should try to defend it to the utmost. And that's what we have to try to move forward. At the moment, the position in central government, actually across all parties, is we want more build, and let's get NIMBY councils out of the way. And this coalition government is saying that, and even the opposition say we need more housing. So the conditions are not good at the moment. I'm not making any excuses. I'm saying foursquare to you, things have been done that should not have been done. Maybe we couldn't prevent those things because inspectors imposed them. I'm saying I accept that if neighbours are not doing things they should do, we should do our utmost to try and support residents. But in some cases, I'm afraid, planners will be told you can't, these people who do buildings are very fly, and if it's just a little bit, the question is, well, the inspector ultimately will say, you've got to let that through. But I don't want to bang on anymore because something I believe very, very strongly about. And that's really what is behind this kind of exercise, to try and erect some small fortification. We're being flooded with not satisfactory building. Let's try and erect a few dikes and a few defences, and that's hopefully what we can try to do with these community plans, I hope. May not succeed, but I think we should try.
I think Councillor Fleming is going to look into some of your points and
I did say I had three, and I'm sorry, but I do have a third point, and it really is serious. I'm not being trite. We all know, and it's on the council minutes, I believe, and it's certainly on the planning application, that a large sum of money changed hands from the developer to the council for such things as primary schools or something in return, and it's something in the region of £40,000. I think it's £41,000. And I'm perfectly serious when I say that between the 33, I think there were more than 33 houses affected actually, but I'll go with Francesca's figure. If we had had the opportunity, we would have raised that money between us and done something different with the land. Particularly on my side of the development, there's two sides of it, past the old station works, where there had never been anything built, ever. So nothing has been improved. What's been removed is an empty space, a green corridor, which I thought was valuable to the council, or to London indeed, and our nice view of trees has been removed. I know we're not entitled to a view. We would have bought that land and run it as a small market garden at a market which isn't so far-fetched, because there is one in Kew now. Is there any mechanism at all in planning for people in a group like ours to be, and the group is only that we live near, to say this sum of money is that if you come up with the 40,000, you can stop this development. Because believe me, I would do anything to retrospectively opt for that, rather than live with this recycling plant at the foot of my garden. It's nearly 23 feet high and stretches for about 60 metres or something. Is there any mechanism by which, if that sort of money is going to help the developer get through, we can use it to stop the developer getting through?
Well, I mean, that sort of money wouldn't have been used to help a developer getting it through. It would actually have been part of the I mean, without going into the application, presumably, this was all debated, and this was the Section 106, presumably it was the Section 106 agreement, for paying for money that would be made as a contribution towards local amenity, local facilities for the development. But I mean, that would not have been, that would have been part of a lot of planning developments, have Section 106 agreements. It isn't a question of money changing hands.
No, I realise this. What I'm asking is there any way that practice can be spread in our favour? Very little in planning is in our favour, as Lord True has admitted. Yeah. And certainly when a development changes its colour, its size, its nature, and even its actual layout on the road or on the ground, several times after agreements have been made, that's not in our favour either. So is there any way we can use this little mechanism of money changing hands? It's not underhand, it's not out of sight.
No, but I think we need to discuss, and I think the land would have to have been bought first of all, as well. So the land on which they
Gladly. The only reason the land wasn't bought some years ago is because it goes behind so many houses that years ago the developer offered individual properties the opportunity to buy fairly small strips, about 20 feet space that they built on between the end of our gardens and the railways. We've all got about 15 or 18 feet of garden, and we were all given the opportunity to buy that strip of land. Can't remember the price. I think it was somewhere between £1,000 and £3,000. And I was one of a number of people who would. But because everybody wouldn't buy it, the developer didn't sell, because he doesn't want, these two belong to me, this one belongs to this lady, this one belongs to this gentleman, and then I own one, and then I don't own the next 17. Now we wish we just said, okay, we'll buy all the ones that nobody else wants, because we never dreamt.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's something that has to be considered legally. I mean, I couldn't give you an answer to that now, but it is something, again, I'm happy when I talk to you later on, that we can take that for consideration. I mean, it's too late for this happening.
It would be nice if it worked both ways, because everything works in favour of the developers, you say. Everything.
I'm deeply sympathetic to everything that you're saying.
And sadly, it is something that we can't sort out this evening. But if you want to make contact with Council Planning afterwards, does anybody else have any further comments on any of the pre-submitted questions? In which
we have the number one?
Well, he hasn't.
I know he's not here, but I'd quite like to know if he are.
You read it, Catherine, and then we'll have it.
Well, I think we can all read.
The question.
Okay, I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting question. I'd quite like to know the answer. How can we meet the need for more sheltered accommodation, if that's the right term, in Kew? As I have in mind the sort of developments the McCarthy and Stone built. Such developments would release a lot of under-occupied family houses whose occupants don't want to leave Kew. Lots of flats are not the answer, especially if they don't have lifts. I fear we missed the trick to develop the former inland revenue sites in this way, just as we did earlier with the block behind Pizza Express.
Well, we do actually, I mean, both in our planning policies, community plan, corporate plan, I mean, the needs of older people and accommodation and planning for the future are very important. And in fact, we've just been considering something called the site allocation plan, which is going to form a part of our planning documents. In that, we had quite a number of representations from the Forum for Older People and met with them so to discuss. So, I mean, whether this is the right type of and whether it's the right type, whether we will actually be able to have find the right sort of site. I mean, this is another matter. I mean, I did ask officers about this, And they did actually particularly say that the planning policies encourage a range of housing, including smaller units, some of which are suitable for older people. And a number of schemes are particularly targeting downsizers. And apparently it's understood that Kew Bridge development has been attractive to that group. It is quite difficult because when people want to downsize, they don't always want to downsize to something very small because they still want to have friends and relatives to stay. So I think one would need to know exactly what people have in mind. But you know, the needs of older people and what they want are always there in our planning policy.
Does anybody here have anything to add to that? No? Yeah, we've had enough. I think we should move on to opening it up to any questions that you might have to take this opportunity to ask. I wonder if we really ought to start that with David and his footbridge so that we don't forget it.
Yeah, just to repeat that.
Yes, please.
It's, there was a proposal some years ago, I don't know if people know about the same strategy, to have a pedestrian link attached to the Kew rail bridge. And since that was mooted many years ago, there's a number of residents in the new developments near the airport that have increased enormously, and they are quite remote from facilities. It would be great and easy for them. It would also be a really good thing for leisure users, walkers, to have that link to Strand-on-the-Green. And people would be very close to Gallantry Station and so on. And there was a comment that it wasn't suitable on a listed structure. And some years later I noticed that Putney Bridge is identical in design and does have a pedestrian attached. So it could be executed in a very nice way, I'm sure. And it would be a kind of improvement in infrastructure and green infrastructure, only with cars and lorries. So it would be a great help.
Thank you for that. Who's going to answer that one?
Yes, I'll have a go to answer it, because I wasn't aware of the original proposal some years ago. It was before my time, but
about 40 years ago.
Oh, was it? By all means, if somebody could formalise that suggestion again to the Transport and Highways Department of the Council, we'll take it up with Network Rail, another partner organisation that we have to deal with, who are sometimes less than transparent in the decision making. But we certainly have a senior manager in the Highways Department whose job is integrated transport planning. So we'll take it up with them. We'll get a response from them. It would be an enormous benefit, I think. That's what they call permeability, that link to the other side would be great. So please, let highways and transport at richmond.gov.uk. If somebody could
we'll collect the details.
Just reconfirm the proposal, and then we'll give it to our senior man, and he'll take it up with Network Rail, and we'll get some comments. Sounds like a really good idea.
Anybody got anything to add to railway bridges?
Actually, I've just looked at the paperwork and it says only concerning Kew. I must apologise, not slow or just spotted it. But this is not a question, this is going to be a suggestion, sir. Armistice Sunday is people of Kew, people from Richmond will all assemble down at Whittaker Avenue. My part of the Legion is Tony, make sure you're at that town hall, 10 o'clock, and my job is to meet the mayor, and some people in you are probably looking at my place saying, where have I seen that fellow before? I'm not saying it has, and I'm looking at that gentleman there, actually. My job is to go into the town hall, see the chap who's in charge, and I hand him so many sheets like this. And that's the order of service. That's for the mayor, councillors, I recognise that lady there, and that's my job. I comes out, I stand on the corner of Whittaker Avenue and I'm going, I'm not joking, offline. Well, over the years, I've done this for the last few years, but after I've done this, and the clergy go down, the mayor, and the legion people, and I've got to say this is not coming from the legion, this is thing I've thought about for many times. So by the time all the public have had theirs, it's Tony's turn to get down to Whittaker Avenue. And what I've noticed, the volume of people is increased. I'm not joking. I've been part of the Legion since I've done my national service. I came out of the army in 1958. So I know Richmond inside out, really. I've lived in Chaucer Avenue. I'm 78 in June. I've lived in Chaucer Avenue 77 years. So, as you appreciate, I've been there. The thing I'm bringing up is, when everyone goes down in arms this Sunday, the people who are standing upstairs, up the top, you're with me, don't you? And the people that are down there, like all these, I call it the establishments, all the people in the Legion, they're down there. And they've got an antiquated address system that come out of Noah's Ark. So the people, no, I'm being serious, I'm standing there and I've got people around me that say, Tony, what are they talking about? What are they saying? And I get a bit embarrassed. I do really. So I thought, so this is only a suggestion, and seeing it's to commemorate the 100 years of the First World War about this year, I thought it's time Richmond had, we're in the 20th century now, up-to-date addresses. No, I'm serious. An up-to-date, where technology picks the air things up and all this. But what I'm saying to you, sir, I think it would be a good idea if you, I know you can't comment now, but it's my suggestion to you, sir, that I think it's something that Richmond could give back to the people of Richmond and the Legion, but before anyone says, oh, we can't do that, great payers' money, we mustn't do this, we mustn't do that, well, it would always be in your hands, because today it's not used on armours or something, so the system's there. It can be used as a security system, telling them silly people that go down to the river when the water's up, they've got to come one way back. That's only a suggestion, and I would like you to take this on board, please. You know, it can only get better, but I think it's the right time of year for the Richmond Council to give something back out of that big chest I keep in the local press.
Thank you very much. I'm sure Councillor True has nodded to that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Would anybody else like to ask the panel any questions relating to Q?
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, my name's Keith. I'm a stead and I live in Kemble Close. We have a residents association and there's 35 tenants. And I know this is a point that a lot of our residents are concerned about. In our view, we've got a real problem with other shops around Kew Garden Station. And this is, as we see it, the heart of our community, right at the centre of Kew. Now, in recent times, and it goes back many years, several excellent shops have been forced out mainly because of the high rents. Shops that come to mind quite quickly are Kew Fish, and that bread shop, but there's many, many more. So there's a real issue here. These shops are well supported, full of people. I think they were pretty good businesses. Perhaps Kew Fish was trying to do too many different things, but basically they're good businesses, well supported, can't last because of the rents. So my question, or our question, is what can the council do to support our local shops?
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, clearly, there's only so much we can do about increasing rents, and it's not just Kew, it's across, you know, the whole of our borough, the whole of our country. we see so many independent retailers who are put out of business, and up pops a Starbucks or another cafe. You know, I think we've got, you know, it gets to the point where the balance it goes the other way. You know, again, another example, I read that there are now less than 1,000 independent bookshops in the whole of the country. It's dipped below 1,000, and again, this is because of increasing rents and the competition with Amazon as well, and things like that. So yes, yes. So there is a limitation to what we can do, but we do. You know, we try and meet and work with the Retailers Association in Kew, which we know is very active, and we support them as much as we can. One of the recent innovations we've got is around the Richmond card, and Nick talked about that a little bit earlier. We've offered the opportunity to every single business in the borough to put together an offer that then residents can use their cards to benefit from. And literally all the business has to do is say, this is the offer, and we will then advertise that on the council website for all customers to use. And we've got about 190 offers at the moment using the card by about 160 different businesses across the borough. You've heard that Kew Gardens, for example, is doing a one free entry for every paying person that comes through the door. There's other great examples in other parts of the country. I think, for example, Twickenham rowing boats have offered, there's an offer there, and they've actually seen a 50% rise in business in February, when they don't normally rent out any boats. They've seen a huge increase in business. So this is something that is open to all businesses, and hopefully that can help you know, the Kew retailers in their fight to you know, generate more revenue, to hopefully overcome those sort of rents. But as I say, we work with the Retailers Association as much as we can. You know, I've already talked about pop-up shops that are available. You know, and I think we've also already put in funding for the Kew Market. So that was, they accessed a Civic Pride grant to be able to set that up, and I know, you know, from what I hear, it's thriving now. So, you know, where there are ways that we can help, we are always willing to listen. And as I say, the right channel is generally through the association, and they can then, you know, they meet with our economic development team on an ongoing basis. Myself and Pamela were at the last one, which was just a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, there is that link through, and we will do everything we can to protect our local shops, because we think that's what gives the character that we so love to our local areas.
Can I just follow up on that one, because the one word I didn't quite hear was rates, and I think you mentioned rates rather than just rents. And it tied in with what you were saying earlier on about the east side of Kew Station, you know, grants, pop-up shops. Now the money is coming for that from somewhere. Could it not be used towards, I hate to use the word subsidising, business rates, so that the existing businesses can actually stay, rather than encourage? It's lovely that new ones are coming in, but are they fly-by-nights and so on?
Well, I think you'll also see that, talking on rates, you'll see that for small businesses below a certain threshold, there is going to be rate rebates of £1,000. So again, and that's from central government. That was announced in the autumn statement last year. So if you look at that, and any small business here, they look at that, and actually our finance, you know, our cabinet of finance has raised this and put press releases out that have been picked up by the newspapers to remind businesses of this benefit. I encourage you to investigate that as another way of combating high rates.
I think there's a gentleman at the back.
Good evening. Tory Minister Jeremy Hunt has been found to have acted illegally on 2 occasions in cutting A&E and maternity services at Lewisham Hospital. He was found to have acted unlawfully and undemocratically in using an emergency process to bypass meaningful consultations. His reaction is to force through clause 119 of the Care Bill, which removes the need for consultation in these circumstances, so that hospitals can be closed without the inconvenience of consulting people who will be affected by these closures. How can the people of Richmond trust a party that behaves like this when it is in power, and how safe are our own health services?
Well, I didn't I hope this wouldn't be a political occasion. I'm elected to be leader of the local council. I happen to be a Conservative. I don't know the facts about Lewisham Hospital. I'm accountable to local people. We have elections in May. If you're dissatisfied with the performance of the local council, you can put your verdict then. But I don't particularly want to get into the issue of Mr. Hunt. I mean, I simply don't know the facts of that. I didn't come here to make a political pitch. We've got an election coming up. I think that we've tried to serve the borough well. If you'll forgive me, I believe that we have tried to earn the trust of local people doing things that we promised to do locally, and that's all lies within my power. And when we promise things locally, we try to do them. If I promise something, I try to do it, and that's the most I can say. I'm sorry if Mr. Hunt's actions have offended you, but I can't comment on the specifics of Lewisham.
I think we'll try and keep everything to the local area if we can.
Sorry, could I take you up on that point, if I may?
Specific issues that are happening at the moment.
Because my invitation here says a question time style event will allow residents to hold the leader of the council and cabinet members to account on the matters that mean most to them. My local health services mean most to me, so I think it's perfectly realistic for me to put these points to the councillors.
But I think
Sorry, did the lady say something? I didn't hear
well,
that.
it's just that the idea today is that we're looking at issues that relate to the local area of Kew, and it's particularly about this planning document that is being out for consultation at the moment.
With respect, that's not what the invitation says.
If you just let me finish. We had a question earlier on about the relocation of a doctor's surgery, which was part of the NHS and commissioning group. That was answered to the extent that the members could answer it. We don't actually have a hospital located in Kew, so I think it is of concern what you say, and I'm sure a lot of us have followed the Lewisham issue, but it doesn't relate to Kew tonight and the issues that we're looking at here. So, with greatest respect, I think we'll put that to one side and move on. There was a gentleman here who was going to make a comment. I don't know if it was about the business rates of the
yes,
shops.
it was in relation to the shops, and principally, Keith asked, what is the council going to do? And I would turn around and say, what are we going to do? We're the residents, we're the people who need to be shopping in our local shops. Every time we go to Amazon, spend our money there, we're denying Mark and I the opportunity to get some income. So it's totally, I think, incumbent on us to support our local shops. Yeoman's closed down before Tesco's appeared.
I think, of course, it's up to us, but my perception very strongly is that we do support the shops. And the ones I'm quoting were very, very well supported from people all the time. So, it's both, isn't it? We need to support them, and we are doing, but we need help to support.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree. I think you're both right, and this is a situation where you're both right. Yes, and we do see it. You do see it so often, and not just your shops, but other services as well. You see residents say, "Help us save help us save these services," and you go there, and there are 6 people, using the service. But so there has to be some, local engagement and involvement as well. But I absolutely take your point that and hopefully you can see that we will be helping, and we will continue to help where we can.
It's a lady at the back. You've got something to add?
Yes, I live on Kew Gardens Road, and I've had appalling problems with developments going on upstairs and downstairs. The developments have gone on the building work has gone on from months and months on end, and in the course of it they've damaged my property, smashed in my door. They then turned on me and cracked my foot to pieces. I've had no help from the police. So, it was good.
Is there something specific that, it's just a general issue about...
Some of the building work it was given planning permission, and it was supposed to last 6 weeks, and they were constantly digging. They decided to daub cement all over my new double glazed windows. shown you boxes. It's a comment about what's going on in the building. Well, I come from a building family in Manchester, from a brickmaker's family. This is what's going on. The police have not helped me. So I just want to raise it.
Well, thank you for making the point. I think probably your concerns will be best addressed by Councillor Fleming. Perhaps afterwards you can make contact with each
I
other.
just want you to know the police have not helped me. They've turned on me and told me to attack my own tree to pieces. And I think this is a dreadful state of affairs. So I'm just making the police.
Yes, I will have a word with you after both, but I'm not sure whether it's a sort of building control matter or it's a matter for your local safe
No, I'm going to stand possibly to. I come from a building family and the police are letting us down, building planning is letting us down, everything is letting us down.
I think perhaps it's better if you deal with this afterwards. Does anybody else have any more questions to... Oh, yes.
Yes, this winter, districts in the non-tidal Thames have suffered severe flooding. Here in the borough of Richmond, we've hardly suffered at all, thank goodness. But my question is, I know it's not the council's direct responsibility, but you must have a view on the adequacy of the flood defences. In Kew, we live surrounded on three sides by water. There were some improvements to the embankment done a year or so ago, up about 200 metres, but that's only a small fraction of the bank, which I think anyone who walks along it regularly realises is in pretty poor repair. Does the council inspect the flood defences, or is it all down to the Environment Agency?
Well, I wasn't in the hot seat. Well, first of all, I'd just like to go back to the flooding alerts and flooding. We did, in fact, towards from Teddington up, we had flood alerts around Hampton, Teddington, Hampton Wick. And in fact, great credit to our environment officers that within literally sort of 3 days they filled 4,000 sandbags and dropped them out to them. And we did actually on our website, which was very well managed, we had regular updates. The council works with the Environment Agency on this, but I mean, clearly, and I think we've either just finished or it's still out, we've got a consultation on flooding and flood risk, in fact, and I'm not sure whether that consultation has finished yet, but it would have been an opportunity to have for you to have contributed. But when we get the result of that consultation, we will be looking also at what further measures we do need to take. I take it on board, absolutely. But great credit to our officers that they did respond in a way that I don't think all London boroughs did. Absolutely superbly, and the regular updates as well. So we are, when it was needed, we were very much on the ball and handling.
Any other comments about how lucky we were to get away with not being flooded? Yes, somebody at the back.
Sorry to complain again, but on the issue of sandbags and flooding, I contacted the council to ensure that they have my disabled relatives who live in Teddington on an evacuation list, because they would actually need to be evacuated to my home where I have a chairlift, not to a town hall or something. 3 days later I got a response suggesting, with an email link, suggesting that my disabled parents made or bought their own sandbags. That was the advice the council sent out.
Well, can I answer that directly? That was on the website, and it was absolutely outrageous that it was. As soon as I discovered that was the past policy of the council, that was torn up, and the events took place which Councillor Fleming has described. We had an emergency committee. The sandbags were prepared, sandbags were handed out to every property, free, within the area which was, in the jargon, the Environment Agency blue line, which was the first line that would have been flooded if the river had gone up. We sandbagged Trolock Island to keep access open to that, and not a single property was flooded. There were in fact plans, obviously there are plans to evacuate people. If it comes to evacuation, actually our chief executive is a member of the London committee dealing with this. If it comes to evacuation, obviously a large number of other agencies become involved under the London emergency procedures. At no point was it considered on the advice that we were getting on an hourly basis that was likely to happen. I mean, your relatives should have been told that. I thought officers down in the area that was nearly threatened continually. Certainly what was there on the website, there was something there on the website which
So you would agree that's a bit of an inappropriate response?
I think it's a totally inappropriate response. When I heard that was someone had seen that on the website, I actually learned about it indirectly quite early in the crisis, and I must say I went, I'm quite a mild man, but weren't quite ballistic about it. And I can tell you no one, everybody in the area was given sandbags by the council.
I think there's a question.
Yeah, I'm not sure the original question has been adequately addressed, because as I understood it, it was a question about the adequacy of the protection, if you like.
It was the communication of the emergency planning team.
Sorry, your point, sorry if I did. No, the communicators, I think I've dealt with the communication point, and there were officers down there literally 24/7 with the people who were most threatened. Your point, you're saying that the question has not been answered about the tidal stretch of the Thames. I think it has been partly answered. The answer is we do, as a council, have regular discussions with the regulating authorities. Obviously, the whole business of the protection of the Thames from the barrier up to the non-tidal stretch of the river is a London-wide provision. I was contacted by the Prime Minister's office quite early in the crisis, saying that, firstly, once the Prime Minister got involved, that we and any other riparian borough would get whatever support we needed in terms of the short term, and that in the medium term, which I hope will be starting, there will be obviously an overall review of the lower stretch of the river. The key thing, obviously, at the moment, because of the barrier, the Thames barrier, we are protected. But this crisis obviously escalated concern about this right to the top of the government, and we clearly are in regular contact with the central government about this, as are other London boroughs, and it is something that we will be obviously looking at. But we're actually quite small pawns in the whole business of defending the whole tidal Thames. But I can assure you we'll be putting the case to make sure that every part of Richmond, including Kew, Barnes, and all these key areas are looked at by the agencies concerned.
And my understanding is that the Thames barrier is not going to last forever.
Nothing lasts forever.
The Thames barrier has almost had the year's worth of up and down feelings gone in a month and a half. What's going to happen to the rest of it?
If it's needed, they will use it.
Yes.
May I come back to traffic congestion in Kew? There was a suggestion from over there about tunnels there in Hammersmith and so on. And when I moved to Kew 25 years ago, there was active talk of a tunnel under the Thames and so on, but the issue was you've got to go into it somewhere and come out of it somewhere, and that's where the NIMBYism cracks in. If there were to be a tunnel, are we confident that we would be happy with if we were living near where it's going to come out? It might be near St. Road.
Talking about the Hammersmith fly under, the Hammersmith fly under.
Well, yes, that's it. But we were going to have a fly under here between the M4 and I think the A316 or something. There was a proposal about 25 years ago. It didn't last very long, but I was new, so I was struck by it. But it was the local hostility to what it would mean in terms of going. There would have to be a start and an end, which would disrupt the neighbourhood. Are we confident that if we did take those sorts of measures, that we here would be confident with what it meant for some of us?
I think we probably know the answer to that.
Barnes would have a view as well.
Yes.
May I congratulate the council on resisting the pressure to sell the town meat tip for development and for upgrading it. I think it's a great idea. But I think we have a question, not quite the same. In the interest of fair votes, the previous regime changed the boundaries of the southern boundaries of Kew to excise some roads out of Kew. And that was done with a view, because of the increasing population up north. The population up north has continued to increase. Can you confirm that there are that there are no plans to excise further roads out of Kew for the same reason?
Well, it does fall to me to answer. I'm not. This would have to be decided by the local boundary commission. I remember very well the discussions over the changes that came in I think it's 2002 after the previous round, when indeed we and the Labour Party at that time objected to the proposals that were put forward, and one of the reasons for the objection was some of the incoherent boundaries that were created. So I don't want to upset anybody, but we have a ward called North Richmond, which is part of East Sheen, part of Richmond and part of Kew, and it lacks, if you like, an individual character. Because he does have an individual character. He's sitting here, but it is a line on a map. Personally, I think that ideally, the interesting thing when we did our all-in-one survey, we asked actually people where they lived, and of course the first thing you notice is that the places where people said they live have no relation particularly to the boundaries, the local government boundaries. In the past, equality of population has been the main criterion the Boundary Commission has used. We are not gunning for another change, but I see the Labour Party is going to...
Well, I was going to ask a question about it.
Yes, but on the other thing, thank you about town meat, never in all the time that I have been involved with it have I contemplated sanctioning the sale of town meat. Town meat is an absolutely vital resource, not only for Kew but for the borough, but I'm grateful for what you said. If we could reunite Kew as a whole, it would be wonderful, but I agree with you, the population changes are such that if the Boundary Commission came back, they might, might see some further changes.
I think, just to say we've only got 10 minutes left, let's not have a political
It's come to my attention that some London boroughs are actually changing their boundaries this year, and much smaller wards are being created. I believe this is happening in Tower Hamlets and Hackney. Is there a possibility that we could have wards that might be smaller, might have fewer councillors, but would perhaps more accurately reflect local communities again? And it is true that yes, the Labour and Conservative parties did indeed cooperate in the last changes, and who knows, we might do it again.
Well, having heard so much of me, you may think that fewer councillors wouldn't be a bad thing. I actually am sympathetic to the idea of smaller member wards and potentially wards that better reflect that this is a matter for massive pre-consultation and discussion. At the moment, I think we should just get on with the business of trying to do good government rather than wondering about ward boundaries. But I'm very sympathetic to the point you made. I think the boundaries that were drawn were not sensible, but keep that part of Kew as being admirably served by its present council.
That's a good backtrack.
Still be standing against them,
We've got another question.
Good evening, councillors. As someone in 2004 pioneered asking residents what they would like in their area, I'm very pleased that something has started, but I'm very disappointed on how it's been conducted. So why have officer-led village plans been introduced instead of giving the residents their statutory right to neighbourhood plans?
Well, I'd answer the question for that. Firstly, we are we do have a neighbourhood forum which has been agreed in hand. It's a matter for local consideration. I think, and I made this point in Parliament, you can read the debates if you like, my comments on this. I'm a strong believer in localism. The defect in the neighbourhood forum approach is it is a single approach and it is very highly regulated. And 25, a certain number of people who are not there, elected originally, are then in charge of the planning in that area for 5 years and not subject to general democratic control. I personally believe that we should be involving more people on a constant basis in terms of reviewing, rechanging and restyling local plans. I believe that the approach that we are taking will prove to be more involving than the government is proposing and will have failed if it's not more involving. And I'm absolutely unrepentant about the attempt to involve communities on a larger scale than 25 delegates in a neighbourhood forum in planning the future of their areas. I think there are many ways to skin a cat. Ham is trying one way, we're trying another way in another community, and I'd say give what we're trying a chance, trust this community, and let's see what we come up with.
The part of the process that I was disappointed with is the way that the officers had led opinion by offering options rather than asking open questions to enable the public to participate fully.
Well, the consultants were involved to lead the thing. Propositions have been put on the wall. In my experience in life is that if you make suggestions or put forward ideas for discussion, that's a good way of promoting discussions. It's not signed, sealed and delivered. We've had, Councillor Fleming may want to say something. You know, we've had meetings with the public, which are open to the public. There's another drop-in session coming up. I really think it is. Firstly, I think it is unfair to officers who put in a tremendous amount in trying to support the community effort to say anything a council officer does is inevitably bad. I think we are very well served by many of our council officers. The second thing is I think that it's not being dictated to. The ultimate thing, this is asking a question. It's an open question. The first village plan, when it's developed, will be the beginning. It can be constantly revisited.
Yes, I would just like to add that also with the community links officers that we've had, they've actually gone out and they've taken up and helped communities and communities work together. And in several areas now, delivering some very, very useful projects. So, I mean, what they've done is facilitate the officers. They've facilitated perhaps groups of communities who might not have come together otherwise. So I think you are being unfair in criticising our officers in this way. I think they've actually helped to promote the localism.
Does anybody have anything further to ask, to add to comments that have been made? If not, I suggest that we wind up 6 minutes early. Thank our panel for spending this morning. If anybody's got a question for Paul, he'd love to say something.
Please. I'll be standing in the corner over there.
Thank you.